Down the right field line, pretty well hit. LaVarn way is the right way here tonight.
Yogi Berra said it's 90% mental, the other half is physical. My name is Ryan LaVarnway, Major League catcher and minor league grinder, and I've spent the last 15 years playing professional baseball while evolving my mindset. I'm fascinated by optimizing that 90%. In this show, I'll talk to elite athletes and mindset coaches about what makes them tick and how they've overcome obstacles in their own careers on the way to finding success. This is Finding the Way. Hey guys, welcome to Finding the Way. I am Ryan LaVarnway, and today I am joined by Jake Olson. If you haven't heard of Jake, I don't know why, because he is extremely inspirational, and anytime I tell someone I am about to talk to the first blind Division I football player, they're like, oh, the guy from USC? So maybe you have heard of him, and you just don't know it. This is Jake Olson. Jake, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Like we were talking about off air, I do not want to focus on your disability of being blind, but I do want to set the tone because you might be the first blind person that I have really had like a full interaction with, and we had some technical difficulties that were totally my fault the first time we tried to record this podcast, and I found myself kind of tripping over my tongue of like, oh, I can't really see you on the Zoom, and then I was like, oh shit, he can't see me either, and then I was like, well, maybe I could text you, and I was like, well, I don't know how he sees texts. Do you find that people have a little bit of awkwardness when they first interact with you for the first time?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you could definitely tell people are walking on eggshells or feel like they have to watch what they say. I mean, I appreciate where the heart's at in that, but I don't think that's like the best way to learn, or to I never want someone to be afraid that I'm like, okay, if you do something that offends me, like I'm not in the space where like I'm gonna hold that against you. It's not it's not like you're doing something malicious where it's like, oh, I'm gonna say this just to piss them off, right? Like it's okay to make mistakes if that's the case. But for me, I don't really even notice when people ask. Like a lot of people are always, the biggest one is like, well, did you watch that movie? And then they're like, oh, I mean, it's like, dude, like that's just a normal question, right? Like I know it says I know you're saying watch that movie, like you're watching, like seeing it, but like, yeah, I understand the question means just like, did you experience that? Like, did you see that movie? Like, it's not like I'm not taking that literally, right? So yeah, man, I'm not the type of guy who usually gets all up in the arms about that stuff, anyways.
So if you haven't checked out Jake Olson's social media profile, you are a funny dude, and you really are engaging and humanizing especially on your Instagram. He's at Jake Olson 61. But you do a little video series where you are the blind referee, and you talk about how NFL referees are the worst call of the week. You had a little series on that, which I think are awesome. Go check them out if you haven't seen it. And you also did a series, the hardest things to do as a blind guy that you've never heard about. And
yeah,
you did 3, 2, 1, but I couldn't find number 1. Number 3 was toothpaste. Number 2 was plugging something into an outlet. I couldn't find what is the number 1 hardest thing that you wouldn't think about.
Man, I honestly, I can't believe I didn't put plugging an outlet as number 1. That's like especially if the outlet's behind like something. I mean, it's a nightmare. But man, probably like, okay, so like on a serious note, the number 1 thing I always tell people that like you never think about is walking into a room and kind of initiating, conversation or contact with someone, right? Because a lot of times you walk in a room, you see someone across the room, you guys, make eye contact, you wave, and then where you're going, you're going to go over there and talk to that person, right? For me, I could walk into a room full of people I know, and I'm relying on, recognizing their voice in order to kind of engage and start that conversation if they're not going to come up to me. So like from a social standpoint, that's like one of the kind of, I guess, the most difficult things is just not being able to kind of initiate as much as, someone could, or as easily as someone could with sight. So I'd say that's number 1. But if I had to put another kind of just like, on that same kind of line of thought as the 2 and 3 there, car door handles, man, like for sure, like you go to a side of the car and it depends on, the size of the car, whatever, but like finding the car door handle, like you really gotta like just like pat that thing down, because sometimes, especially with like Jeeps, are like it's like the handle's up on the door, kind of, and then Teslas, forget about it, man. I still don't know how to open a Tesla door. I learned how to open it from the inside, but like, yeah, if you're in a Tesla, like, you do not have to worry about me coming and robbing you. Like, I will not be able to open that door.
Things you don't think about, right?
Right, that's true.
So Jake Olson's story, if you don't know it, Jake, you obviously already know this part. He was born with retinoblastoma, a rare cancer in the retina in your eye. At 8 months old, you lost your left eye, and then you had vision in your right eye until you're 12 years old. You battled cancer and beat it 7 times, and then on the 8th time, cancer came back and took your eye away from you. What was that like, beating cancer and 7 times it going away, 7 times you beat it? What was the emotional roller coaster like every time you probably got a phone call and then had to check in every 6 months? What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was just constantly going up and getting checkups and, going through the motions. And, honestly, I think kids are some of the most resilient or, adaptable people on the planet, just because, it's like what they know, right? And so for me, that was kind of my childhood, it was my life of just going up to CHLA. Being born and raised in Southern California, that's where I was treated, which really worked out as a blessing because, the top doctor that treated retinoblastoma was located at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. So, but it was just, my childhood was going up there, getting those checkups. You would think that it would be more like devastating every time, I was told that cancer had come back and we had to go through more treatment and try this thing now, try that thing now. But to be honest with you, I was just so used to kind of being in that battle and that fight that it just, okay, like, here we go again. It wasn't the biggest deal to me. I just, was willing to put up with that and fight as long as I needed to. Well, it was more of kind of the shock factor. The thing that really got me was, that 8th time when I was told that we couldn't fight anymore, right? That we'd exhausted all treatment options and that we couldn't use this treatment anymore to fight it. And that, again, that last option was the removal of the eye, like when I was a kid or when I was a baby. That really kind of was more frustrating and a shock than any of the other times, because all of a sudden I'm kind of being told, hey, like, we can't fight this thing anymore. And obviously that just really didn't compute with me. And it was, I guess, a different type of fight, which was now blindness. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of more of the devastation of just the fact that, hey, I fought for 12 years, put a lot of into that, and to be told that at the end, hey, we're going to have to lose this eye anyways, was just really frustrating.
Yeah, I can only imagine. That's a phone call that you never forget, and that your family just changes everything about your life, your family's life. About this time when you were around 12 years old, you kind of caught the public attention when. How did the relationship with Pete Carroll and USC football happen? Did you write a letter to them?
No, I basically was surrounded by people who had connections with USC. Either that being, like, I'll give you a couple examples. Like, our neighbor 2 doors down was like an adjunct professor at USC, and then we had a couple family friends who knew people that were either like on the team or like one of my family friends, a daughter that I went to school with, like, she danced with like a couple of girls whose brother was on the team. So like, it just, people kind of were able to acknowledge my story. And one of the things I told my parents that fall was just, before having that surgery of losing my eyesight, that I just wanted to see as much USC football as possible, just because I grew up a huge USC fan, and it was the fall and football season, and it's, hey, what do you want to see in the last 6 weeks here? And it's like, I just want to see as much USC football as possible. So that kind of desire got to Coach Carroll, probably in the athletic department, on multiple avenues. But when Coach Carroll heard that, I mean, obviously he was more than gracious and really just wanted to make that happen and then some. And, I don't think he ever knew, obviously he didn't know me, and I don't think he ever expected or knew that the relationship was going to blossom as much as it did. But I think as soon as he met me and kind of felt my spirit, I think he knew it was going to be special. And the way I connected just authentically with him and the team and the players, again, I don't think anyone ever knew how much it was going to grow. Like, I think it's kind of one of those things where coaches will, invite the family, invite that kid who's going through that cancer or going through this disease, and like, it's a cool day, and like, that's awesome. But I just think the way I connected, especially that first day, and it grew much more than just a special circumstance. Like, I became part of the team. I became a little brother to a lot of those players. Like, I became, just a friend to Coach Carroll. I mean, he calls me his hero. He's my hero. His right hand man said it the best, is that like Coach Carroll and Jake are like the same person, just 50 years apart. And I really think just that statement says it all, in the sense that our positivity, our optimism, our fight, our desire to want to compete, all that is very true in both of us. And it just naturally connected. And because of that, it turned, I think, much more than what probably they thought was just going to be a one-time or a couple-time thing of just this kid showing up and enjoying seeing practice and games. It turned into like an actual relationship.
Yeah, you can tell that. Obviously, there was cameras that followed you around when you were a kid, and you had those last 6 weeks of being able to see. And it's amazing to see the relationship between both Coach Carroll and you and the players. You're shown a lot on the video with Matt Barkley. I grew up a USC football fan as well. My dad attended USC, so V for victory for life. But I'm watching this video, and it's so heart-wrenching and so inspiring. And your mom asked you if you were okay, and you responded, "This is just going to be a new stage of my life." And in the video, you can see that your mom is devastated, and you kind of comforted her, even though you were about to have this life-changing surgery. And it seems like you're saying you inspired Coach Carroll. You've been inspiring everyone your whole life. How were you able to inspire others, even while going through the most difficult thing that I would imagine that you had to go through?
Yeah, well, I think it just was taking the lead of, letting other people know that I was going to be okay. I think one of the hardest parts of someone going through something is actually not the person, but, the person or people who love that person. Because, for them, you can only do so much for a person, right? You can be there, you can love them, you can support them, you can give them the tools, you can, again, be the support system and help them. But at the end of the day, it's out of your control. And that person going through the thing, not that person's in much more control, but they are in control of their attitude. They're in control of a lot that, can push through. And so for me, I understood that even as a 12-year-old. And so it's like, hey, I'm like, I just want to let them know that, like, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to, not let this stop me. I don't know what that necessarily looks like, but I'm going to take that, mindset to this. And I think, one, that was for me and just the life I wanted to live. But two, it was, for my parents and people who love me, and just wanting to give them the peace of mind that, hey, like, they don't have to worry about, what if Jake just, curls up in a ball and doesn't achieve anything? And what if, we have to take care of him the rest of our life? And what if, like, he's this, what if he's that? Like, I didn't need them worried about that too, right? Like, I'm sure they were already freaking out that their son is going through this and everything. So, to kind of give them that peace of mind was just, made that decision even more concrete.
So you inspired your parents, you inspired Coach Carroll, you had the surgery to remove your right eye, and now you're completely blind. What was that like, as someone who has seen my whole life, and you had vision until you were 12, and then they removed your eye? Does it feel to you like your eyes are closed? Do you see black? What is that experience like for you?
Yeah, so you don't see black because like, seeing black is still seeing, right? If you went into a dark room and you couldn't see anything, like, you're still that statement, I can't see anything. Like, you're still seeing, you're just not seeing anything.
Right.
So to be blind, is to actually, to not have that vision anymore, is to not really see. So basically it's just your mind's eye at that point, right? Like, just kind of almost like if you were to imagine, what you dreamt about last night, or if I told you to picture, like, camp as a kid, like, what would that look like? And it's a little more vivid than just like your memory, but like it's a lot like that. The other thing that I never thought, when I was having to find out I was going to go blind in, that 6 weeks, like, I thought I was going to have to picture things a lot more, right? Like, oh, what would this look like? What would that look like? And there's a lot of times in the day where I'm just, you forget, like, not that you forget you can't see, but like, you just forget that, like, it's something that, is like part of life, I guess, just because it's not there. So like I'm just so focused on what I'm hearing or like what's going on and ascertaining what's going on through my other senses that, there's not a lot of times where I'm like, hey, what would this look like right now? Or like, oh, I need a picture what this is looking like. Like, yeah, there's sometimes, right? Like there's sometimes, but like, I don't know, it's just not as much as you would expect. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I mean, it definitely is, it was a weird thing, but like, I think part of going through cancer as a kid and depending on the treatments we were going through, there would be times where I just would have really bad eyesight and there'd be other times where I had decent eyesight. But because of that, I think my body really did learn how to start using the other senses, like my ears to know kind of where space is and orient myself. And so, a lot of times, like if I know where if I'm in a space where I know how the layout and everything, and I can, hear for things, where walls are and where openings are, and like my apartment building, right? Like I'll walk around there without my cane just because, or my guide dog, just because, if I'm walking to the gym, like I just know where I'm going and know where to turn because I can hear the hallway open up. Like there's things that you just use that you, I don't know, you have to develop and your body uses to make up for the lost sense. But I think I'm probably ahead of most people who are going blind just because like my body did that as a kid. And like I said, kids are so adaptable. I think that was a really, a blessing in disguise that after I went blind, I'm like, oh man, like my body already kind of knows how to do this to an extent.
Wow. That's so interesting. So let's now transition into your football career. You had played as a kid, and then as a junior in high school, you decided you wanted to play again. And you were quoted as saying, "Truthfully, I sort of sucked when I got started."
Yeah.
How did you get to motivated to get back into it? And what was your thought as far as how far did you think you could take it? Did you ever think you'd be snapping for the Pac-12 winning USC Trojans in 2017?
Yeah, so I love football, right? I mean, growing up in Southern California, I loved USC, clearly, and then just loved the game, and was playing flag football in middle school, and was probably would have started playing Pop Warner and tackle in the next year or two, but then seventh grade is 12 years old was when I went blind, and that kind of threw a wrench in things. I played flag football in my 8th grade year even after going blind, but I was the center and kind of could snap the ball and shotgun and kind of block the person in front of me to an extent, like it, but it's it's like flag football, and in middle school it's not that big of a deal, right? Like, so when I went to high school, I went to Orange Lutheran, which plays in the Trinity League in California, Southern California. So we get to play every year in our league, teams like Mater Dei and St. John Bosco and Servite. So the top teams in all of America. I would venture to say, and I don't think there's much of an argument, that the Trinity League is probably the most difficult high school football league in all of the country. And so that was real tackle football. I mean, that was, the highest level tackle football in high school. And so I went in as a freshman and just basically admitted, hey, this probably isn't going to work out. Like, I can't be a center anymore, even though I was pretty consistent shotgunning the ball back there to the quarterback. And obviously if he was under center, like that's pretty easy to snap the ball back. You don't need a C to do that. But, as a center, you're calling out the Mike linebacker, you're calling out different protections. Like, obviously I couldn't do that, right? Like, I can't see where number, 54 is on the field to call out, that's the Mike. So I knew that, did play, but Friday nights would go to the games and would just kind of like be kicking myself, right? Like, man, like what could I do? Just thinking, could I be a manager? Could I participate? I really want to play football. Again, this is a game I love. And finally, after talking to my friends who were on the team and everything, I was like, man, is there just any way? Like, I really don't want to look back on my high school career regretting not playing ball, right? Like, I'll have the rest of my life thinking back about high school and being like, shoot, I just really should have played football. I didn't want that to be me. And so came upon the long snapping position, which was this position, again, snapping the ball. So like I kind of did as the center, but this time you don't have that same blocking responsibility. And so basically, I went down like the end of my sophomore year during spring ball, like right before school kind of got out in May. I went down there one time and basically was like, yeah, I know how to snap the ball. Like I can do this. And I tried with the one hand, like I was, a center, and I could kind of get the ball back there pretty good. And consistently, like I did in 8th grade, and just knew how to do. But long snapping is a little more tricky than that. It's a lot faster. It's a lot more kind of consistent, a little more spiral on the ball. And so you definitely have to use two hands, and it just has to be a certain skill set. And, for me, I never learned that skill set. So I tried to put two hands on the ball in front of the coaches that day, and I just sucked. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was really bad. Right. And so here, I don't blame the coaches for this necessarily, because if you put yourself in their shoes, everyone would have the same reaction, which is, okay, here's this blind kid wanting to come play football on the team. The coaches, they have to be competitive, right? Because of the league we play in. So their jobs are on the line, right? The way they put food on the table for their families is by coaching. So they don't want to make fools out of themselves and just accept this blind kid and, hey, yeah, well, this, that, whatever. So they kind of blew me off and basically were like, hey, it's already crazy enough that you think you can do this, but you think you can do something that you don't even know how to do. I'm sure they were just like, what the hell? So they kind of pushed me aside. But there was this one coach who basically said, hey, if you want to learn how to long snap, I'm not promising you'll ever see game time. I'm not promising you'll ever get it or whatever, but at least I'll show you the technique in which you can, learn how to actually do this. So I said, sure. So that rest of the school year, a couple of weeks left of school, we met every day after school. And then even in the summer, we actually started meeting, during the weekdays off campus. And basically hour and a half was just there going through the drills, learning how to, get that spiral, learning how to snap, be more consistent. And by the time August came around, then back into fall camp for high school football, I showed up and showed what, to the other coaches and to, the punter and the holders and everything, what I could do now. And, it just was, hey, Jake's probably the best snapper on the team. We're going to have to figure out how to get him out there and line him up. But, from a standpoint of just who's the best snapper and the most consistent, it was me. And this is where I give huge kudos to my coaches. Because, there were some other kids who could long snap, but they said, no, Jake wants to play. He has going to be a little different. We're going to have to figure something else out. But we're not going to just simply, put someone else out there because they can see. We'll make it work with you, and so long as you can do your job. And that kind of was the deal for my junior and senior season. So I started, as a starting long snapper on varsity, and it just was honestly the best memories I have in high school.
So you keep talking about how there was no guarantee you were going to play. I'll teach you how to do it, but there's no guarantee. And when you were fighting cancer, there's no guarantee you're ever going to beat cancer. And you inspired your parents, you inspired Pete Carroll, you inspired this high school coach to spend extra time with you one-on-one every single day and then over the summer. You talk about how you've always been a fighter, and you give credit to the fact that you were a kid when you had to start fighting. But there's more to it than that. There has to be, because you didn't have to fight, and you didn't have to fight battles that there was no guarantee of winning, or not even a good possibility of winning necessarily. What is it that you tell yourself when times are tough? And I'm coming at this from a perspective of maybe our listeners can get something out of this and take it into their own lives. When the odds are stacked against you, what do you tell yourself to keep fighting?
Well, my personal definition of resilience is that there's a will, there's a way. And and I think a lot of times in life, people got it mixed up, right? So if there's a will, there's a way, right? When there's a will, there's a way. A lot of times in people's life, they say, well, if there's a way, I'll have the will. Or when I can see the way, then I'll have the will. And life just doesn't work that way, especially when you talk about these life-changing events that come up, right? You get in a car accident, you come home, you find out you have cancer, your spouse has cancer. These things kind of hit you upside the head, and you're not going to see the way. You can't see how things are going to play out or how you're going to get through it. And because of that, people lose the will. And it's sad, but like, one of my favorite Bible verses is like, we live by faith, not by sight. And I think it really applies here in the sense that control what you can control, which is your will, right? Your attitude, your will to want to push forward. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through cancer. I'm going to play football. I have the will to do that. And then you can find the way, and the way will show itself, and it'll be a journey to find the way, and there'll be different ways, and not, you'll fail and realize that that's not the way, and all those things come into play then, and we can talk about that. But what you just pointed out was, hey, what did you have during all those times? And that's just the will. And as long as I knew I had that, then I knew there was going to be a way that presented itself, one way or another. And the beautiful part about that is when you show people you have that will, it is contagious. And there will be people that will then come alongside you and help you find that way. And that's in every part of my life. If that's education, if that's with football, if that's with my golf, if that's with business, if that's with anything in life, people have come alongside me and helped me find that way, and were support systems in finding that way and provided that way for me. But it started with me, right? Like, it started with me showing them that I had that will and had that passion and that desire to want to push through. And again, let that be contagious. And it really is. I really believe, people don't understand the power behind letting people know you have this desire to go out there and do something, and you want to find that way because you have the will to do so. And I just think you go through any success story, it's going to first start with that person taking upon themselves, taking that personal decision that I'm going to do this, I have the will to do this, and then they start finding that way. And guess what? Along that way comes this person that helped them do this, and that person that helped them do that. And then they look back on it, how many years later, and they say, man, like, if it weren't for me first taking that step, and then all the people that came alongside me, I never would have accomplished this. But that's at the heart of every success story.
Oh man, I feel like I could run through a wall right now. I love listening to you talk about that. And on the ESPN video that highlights you and really highlights your story, you're quoted as saying, "I want to be an example to others, where they can look at me and then they can find the courage inside themselves to face their fears and face their adversities and go dominate life." Just as a kind of a wrap-up question for you, because this has been such a great episode, if there's someone out there that's facing a challenge, whether it be a disability or an injury or a family member or a lack of support in their own world, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say that, one, I believe, and that's not the most important part. Most important part is you believe in yourself, but I believe that in each of us, does not matter who you are, where you've come from, where you were born, what color you are, nothing. I believe in all of us there is this winter within, I call it a lot of times, but just this deepness inside of us that wants to come out and be resilient, that wants to come out and fight, and wants to come out and achieve and overcome. And really, when you believe that you have that inside of you and tap into that, however that may look, I believe there's a lot of power in that. And again, you got to be the one to figure out, one, how to tap into that. What does that look like when you tap into that? Again, it's not going to be this necessarily this rah, like, let's run through a wall for everyone. I get it. But what does that look like for you? And then when you find that, and you find that kind of that desire to want to overcome, then where do you want to kind of channel that? And that's really, into the passions and the desires you have in life. And, I think one of the most beautiful things about humans is that, we all have different desires, and thank God we do, right? Like, some people want to play football, some people want to paint, some people want to, just be nurses, some people want to, there's so many different desires. And so whatever that looks like for you, another version of your question, a lot of times people ask me, my kid's, blind, and, he's struggling, how do I be a good parent to him? Or, what do I do? It's like, man, just love him, and whatever he kind of shows you and or she shows you and what they want to do in life and what they're passionate about, they love, then help them find that way. Because in a way, they're showing you they want to have a will to paint, they want to have a will to sing, they want to have a will to do this. So help them find that way, whatever it looks like. And when you do that as a person, again, you're going to find that it is, like I was explaining, it is contagious. So if you don't think there's anyone around you right now that cares, or you think no one loves you, or no one is around to help you achieve that, I promise you, don't worry about that. Like, I know it's stressful, I know it can feel lonely, but don't worry about that, because I promise you, if you start just worrying about yourself and that will and choosing that way, to start finding that way, there will be people alongside you that come that maybe you don't even know yet, but there will be people that come along and flank you and just say, hey, we're going to help and carry you sometimes and do these things and open these doors for you. I'm telling you, it's almost like math. It really is almost like 2 + 2 = 4. Like it's how life works. And the people that, never thought they were going to be successful or never thought this or that, the other, if you probably ask them in their darkest, deepest moments of their failures and stuff, they probably said the same thing that you're saying right now, which is, man, I just didn't know how I was going to get through. I didn't know how I was going to have that way, and that's okay. Like I said, we live by faith, not by sight. So have the faith that you have inside of you to keep pushing forward, and that you are loved and supported. And it's probably maybe even by people you don't know yet. Just have that faith in that, and I promise you, you're going to look back and just be like, wow, I've accomplished something that in that moment I never even thought was possible.
Awesome, man. Well, what I got from you during this session is that you can control your attitude, and if you're positive, optimistic, you have the desire to succeed, it's contagious, and the people around you are going to want to drive also. And that if you're a parent or a peer of someone that really wants to accomplish something, encourage their will to succeed. Jake Olson, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been Finding the Way.
Thanks for listening to Finding the Way with Ryan Lavarnway. Find previous episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.